Well, what is up, guys? Today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to replace your brake pads and your rotors. Because, let's just say hypothetically, you've been putting off replacing your brake pads for a very long time and you have chewed through your rotors. So we'll show you how to replace those. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, just need a few tools. So let's get doing that. I got my jack on the ground and I've got it going up. Let's see, right in there in the front of the tire is a good point to put your jack. Probably specifically designed to put your jack because it looks like it cradles it very nice. And I bring the jack handle around so it fits right in between this space. And I'll go ahead and start jacking it up. Alright, now before you get too excited raising the front of your truck, van, car, whatever, you want to put stopper blocks on the back tires just so when it raises up, the little center of gravity changes around in the van and you don't want it to roll forward on you. Now I would put on the parking brake. It would work for the front, but if you put on the parking brake for the rear, it tightens up the tire and it's hard to get the rotors off because it kind of presses out on the rotors. Anyway, so I've got this very trusty, very handy giant oak block that I always use to put my jacks on in case they are too short to reach the van. That's a pretty high clearance. The jack that actually comes with the Sprinter van reaches very nice, but it's just such a small base that contacts the ground that I always feel safer if I have like a bigger jack somewhere near it just in case one fails for redundancy's sake. But this jack is not tall enough to reach the bottom of the van, so I got to put it on this big oak block. I think all my vehicles have some sort of lift to them, so this has come in handy many a times. That one's not going to be used to lift the van. I'm actually going to use the point that the manual recommends to lift the van off the ground, and this one's just going to come up and kiss the bottom of the van. Alright, so I got the both jacks just kissing the bottom of the van. You don't want to lift the tire off the ground because when you go to break loose those bolts, you don't want to be free spinning. So these little caps are just pressure fit. It's easier to get like a couple little things in there and then pop it off just like that. And if you can't get enough oomph to break loose these bolts, I mean, you could jump on it, kick it, do anything you want, punch it, whatever. It's always a lot easier to get a long metal pipe, bar, something. Stick it in there and break them loose. Leverage is your friend. You don't need to bring it off the ground all that much, just enough to allow it to free spin. Then you can finish taking all your bolts off and you're free. And as you can see, hopefully, maybe, see that lip on the rotor? Yeah, the brake pads were eating into it and creating a whole bunch of little metal shavings and eating into my rotor. That is when you know you need to replace it. On the top right here we got these little rubber doodads that keep water out of the bolt hole locations. On the bottom there's one as well. I think this is a 6mm. It's almost like an Allen key type head, a little hexagon head. And this is what so on this top bolt, it was seized pretty good, and even with the impact with the little Allen key, it wouldn't break loose. So I went to a torque bit. I think that's what those call them, little star head bit, torque bit. It's a T40, and I broke it loose with a wrench. And now I can back it out the rest of the way with a drill. Just makes it quicker and easier. Now I should have mentioned, before you start messing with your brakes, your calipers and your rotors, all that stuff, you want to release the pressure on your brake fluid manifold that's in the top of the van. This right here, just go ahead and relieve that pressure, and that gets air down into it, so when you're compressing the brake pads and moving all that stuff, the fluid can rise and lower as needed without any excess pressure. And at this point, this should just slide off. This one is so almost corroded to the point where it's just sticky. Yeah, there's a lot of rust in there. I'm going to need to clean that out. And you just want to tuck it up in there just so it's out of the way for the rest of the job. Just prop it up in there to where it doesn't kink the brake lines. Typically there's a little sensor that connects the brake pad to that portion, but for some reason the only tire that had it was the front right one. So might need to get more. Take off the brakes. It literally just spits in there, slips in there, like so, and you just pop them out. Now this isn't too badly gone, but for some reason it was eating into my rotor. So there's brakes. Next thing we got to take off this baby right here. So on the back there's just 2 bolts, 1, 2, undo those, and this will slide right off. Now for these 2 bolts, I'm using a 13/16 ratchet, and these are, I can already tell, going to be tricky to get off. All that gunk on the inside of that. Definitely gonna want to clean this up, maybe get some of that brake cleaner spray and then get a wire brush and clean up all that gross residue that's in there. So that brings us to the rotor itself, and Mercedes actually has this little star head, torque head connector screw that just holds the rotor on for alignment, so when you put on your tire, the bolt holes all line up all the way through. So we need to take this off next. And once you got that little bolt out of there and your rotor's stuck, just get a little rubber mallet or the back of your really old drill. That was almost welded on there with rust. So shiny, so fresh, so new. There's the old one. Front and back brake cleaner. I got that as cleaned up as good as it's gonna get with a wire brush. Alright, so we got the new brake pads, and I put a little bit of grease just on the edges using some brake lubricant, and I took off these old clips which fit on just like that, but I got new ones. These came in the kit. And I'm going to put a little bit of lubricant in there as well. Already put on the new rotor, put on the new star head screw for alignment's sake. This just slides over the rotor. And these you don't need to over tighten, just as tight as you possibly can get it by hand. Now your new brakes, the curvature of the back of the brake follows the curvature of the rotor. So it's going to go in pad facing the rotor, and it's going to slide in there just like the other pads did. Same on the back. Now if you had a little sensor, this little notch right here is where that sensor what in the world? That's not my cat. Alright, now onto the probably trickiest but also easiest part of the brake reassembly is compressing these little pistons. All I do is get a little clamp like this that is large enough to touch the top portion and the bottom of the, I guess it's a piston, and you just squeeze it and it will slowly compress it. And at this point, if that's all you needed to do, replace all your rotors and brakes in pairs, your front two and then your back two. But if you're just doing your front two, that's how you do it. So after you do that, then you're going to want to pump your brakes and reconstitute that brake fluid into your lines to compress these compressed pistons back onto the brake system. And always remember to cap back your brake fluid housing. You don't want that stuff spilling out everywhere. Oh yeah, put on these little rubber hole fillers. Alright, so I went ahead and took off the back tire, jacked it up from the back and the position that it told me to in the manual. This one's a little bit different than the front, so I'll just show you through. There's no rubber caps, it's just a bolt, and I forgot what size bolt that is, but these are worn out just as a little bit less than the front, but still worn out to where I need to replace them. And this one actually does have a sensor on it, so I'm going to pull this sensor, and when I pull off the brakes, this will be attached to it, and the back brakes actually came with new sensors, so I'll be installing those on the rear. So it's just that left front one that I don't have a sensor, but it's really very simple. You just pop it out, and as you can see, that hole and where it connects to on the brake just slips into place. These would most likely need a little compression help to get this system off the brake because it squeezes, and there's only one piston instead of the two on the other one. So to break this loose, once I undo these bolts, just going to stick a screwdriver in there and just kind of compress the piston just enough to be able to slide off the caliper. And after that, everything else is pretty much exactly the same as the front. Undo the bolts, we'll undo this system, the two big bolts that you undo, 1, 2, and that undoes this that holds the brakes in there, and I'm going to clean them up just like the front. Same exact process, but just wanted to walk you through those slight variations, just showing you the wire that comes off. It's bolted, and you might need to just stick a screwdriver in there and compress that piston a little bit to slide off the rest of the mechanism.